Hello, my name is Lisa Anderson. I am a Chief HR Officer for a technology company. I am also the president and owner of Positively in Pursuit, which is a coaching business for women leaders. I coach women on finding their voice, especially in male-dominated environments, building their leadership courage, and increasing their executive presence. I am super excited to kick off this video series called Pulling Back the Curtain, where I share some insights. Since I've always been on the other side of the table, being in HR for over 25 years, I've decided to pull back that curtain and share some insights from the other side. So today's lesson, we are going to talk about interviewing. And when I mean just not just interviewing, because I know there are other videos out there on interviewing, but again, the motivation for me doing this video series is that I have been speaking to a lot of women who are in toxic work environments, and they're either have just left them or they're trying to get out. And the question that I always ask is, what is your exit strategy? And I'm not liking what I'm hearing because sometimes we don't have an exit strategy. And if you're in a toxic work environment, you have to have an exit strategy and you have to be aggressively and intentionally working your plan, your exit plan, right? So, what interviewing, the way I'm talking about interviewing is interviewing for culture. So even though you're trying to get out of this toxic environment, the worst thing you want is to jump into another toxic work environment. Not good. You don't want to leave the frying pan and jump into the fire. So while you're still working, if you can get a little strategic and intentional in some of your interviewing, where you can try to get a sense of that culture before you get in there to the next place, that would be best. So that's what today's lesson is. So let's jump right in. A lot of times when we get the call from the recruiter that they want to interview us, right? They have our resume, they see our skills, they see our experience. A lot of times the recruiter is asking you all the technical questions because they want to make sure that you can actually perform the duties of the job. And I got to give it to the recruiters. They are also looking or listening for your personality and whether you will be a good fit for the company, right? So a recruiter is doing that in the exchange. But you as an individual need to have some specific questions to ask the recruiter. And you can ask it of the recruiter, but what I like to do, great recruiter, but I need to talk to the manager. I need to talk to who I'm going to be reporting to, right? So usually you got to get through the recruiter screen, right? You don't get a chance to talk to the manager until you get through the recruiter screen. But once you get through the recruiter screen and they say, hey, we want to bring you in or do the virtual interview, first question you need to ask, who's going to be interviewing me? Will it be my new boss? Will it be the person I will be actually working with? Because it's important for me to be interviewing with the person that I'm working with. And if the interviewing process does not include the person that you're going to be directly working with, that's a red flag. Red flag waving in the wind. Now, you might not get it, you might get the recruiter screen, another level of interviews, and then the person you're working for. But somewhere in that process, you have to interview with the person that you're working with. So when you get that interview and you're now working or you're now interviewing with your potential new boss. Here are some of the questions that you need to ask. Now, they're going to ask you their questions, all about the job, all about how you work, all that good stuff. But here are some questions that you need to ask. Number one, what is your management style? You want to know, how does this person manage? What are the expectations of you coming in under this person? How do they like to work? Very important for you to know. Number two, how do you support employees? Specifically, how would you support me in the first 90 days or in the first 6 months as I'm trying to get acclimated? What would be your expectations of me? Number two, here's a question that I always ask, and usually I am interviewing for senior director, VP, and C-suite positions, right? So I will ask, and I'm usually interviewing with the CEO. My question to him or her is, if I were your sister, what would you tell me about the culture and what I would need to do in the first 90 days to assimilate into the culture? And remember, I'm your sister, so you want me to succeed. That question usually stumps a lot of CEOs because they're like, whoa, especially if they have a sister. I had one person say, I have a sister and her name is actually Lisa. And I said, beautiful. Well, just imagine I'm your sister Lisa. Instead of Lisa Anderson, I'm your sister Lisa. What would you tell me about the culture that will help me in the first 90 days, assimilating? So that's another question that you can throw out. Because again, you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, right? So you want to ask these questions, right? And sometimes, now you got to be totally prepared for this. If you start asking these kind of questions and they're like, oh boy, you might get screened out for the position. My question to you is that okay? Would you rather be screened out, or no, we're not going to move forward, than you getting in there and all of these questions or things that you're asking that's important to you is not there? And eventually you're right back in a toxic work environment, or it's an environment that doesn't work for you. So, as I have grown in my career, it's okay. Screen me out. Because the way I look at it is you're saving me some heartache. If the things that are important to me, your organization and your culture doesn't support that. So you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for, I'm asking a lot of questions, and if they're not good with this, then I might not be the one to get this position. So you got to be okay with that. So interviewing for culture. Here's the other thing with interviewing for culture. You have to understand for yourself, what cultures do you thrive in? So in other words, if you have an entrepreneur spirit, then you might look for a culture that has an entrepreneur spirit. They want you to come in, they love your ideas, you're the go-getter, that might be great if you can find a culture. So, but if you don't know that about yourself, you're not going to ask the right questions. You may thrive in a culture that is very innovative, very creative. So if that's the culture you thrive in, you want to be asking the manager or panel or whoever you're interviewing with, what's, you know, how does your company innovate? Is there a way, do you guys have think tanks, right? Do you guys have innovative workshops and, lunch and learns and all the things? And if you ask that question and they're looking at you like, no, we don't do that. Red flag. That might not be the culture for you. So you have to get clarity on what kind of cultures you thrive in. Every culture is not, you might not thrive in every culture. So getting that clarity about you is so important. So then you can ask the right questions in interviews. All right. So I hope that interviewing for culture, this particular video was helpful for you. My hope is that you use some of these tips to minimize the chances of you jumping from one culture to another culture that doesn't align with you. That's the thing, right? Now, absolutely, people will say things in the interview and then you get there and it's something else. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but as much as you're transparent in the process and ask these specific questions, hopefully between you or them, they will screen. Either they would screen you out or you would say something they said or just the way they reacted to that's not the right culture for me. And you may screen yourself out of the process and say, no, thank you. I don't want to move forward. Right. So I hope those things are helpful. So the next video, I will be sharing more information around, this particular topic. But I hope that this video was helpful. And so until next time, see you soon. Bye-bye.